All right, everyone. Welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 10 recap. All right, 10 weeks are in the books. That was a little taste of John Prine for you, Detling. I know you love him. Rest in peace. Yeah, one day you're up, next you're down. Hope you enjoyed those 5-6 days of first place. Got a little taste of what it's like. Josh was rooting against you to get beat pretty quickly. So yeah, that's what it's like being being at the top. You got a target on your back, and everyone is shooting arrows at that target. So I guess it wasn't. It was too much for you. Couldn't hold on to it. Had to let it go, at least for the time being. So let's not get ahead of ourselves, of course. But yeah, we had a matchup this week. Yeah, I don't know if it was. I don't know if I mentioned it or if it was mentioned in the podcast. The matchups were, in terms of standings, 1 versus 2, 3 versus 4, 5 versus 6. And only not too much changed. I think Gags and Possum, even though Possum won, they both stayed at 3 and 4. Was Disco 5, I think. So he didn't move with his victory, and he just knocked Darkwing Jut back a little bit, at least for now, because I'm sitting here looking at the standings, and so Darkwing Jut got knocked down into 7th place. Hillbillies moved up ahead of him. They're both 5 and 5, but the Hillbillies are almost 400 points ahead of Darkwing Jut. So that's not looking good for you if it's going to come down to a head-to-head matchup in terms of record when it comes to making the playoffs. I was looking back last year just to remember, if you guys recall, last year, 5 out of 6 playoff teams, all your records were 7 and 6. There was only one team, the Hillbillies on PCP last year, I believe went 10 and 3, and every other playoff team, all the rest of the teams were 7 and 6. I think I'd actually forgotten about that, but so it comes down to your points. We're at a point where it could end up being a lot of 7 and 6s making the playoffs here. We've got several teams who are already at 6 wins, some 2 5s there, a couple 4s. We'll get to that whenever we get into the matchups here, but what was I going to say? Where was I going with this? I don't know. It's a big jumbled mess, but yeah, what I was going to say is, with Week 10 now being in the books, we've only got 3 weeks to go. So Hillbillies and Darkwing, you're at 500. You're even. You're back where you started. You've got 3 games left to win 2 out of 3. You got to get at least 2 probably. Will 6 and 7 be good enough this year? I don't think so, considering 5 teams are already at 6 or more. So Hillbillies, we'll see what happens if some of the people who are 4 and 6 can catch up to you and steal a playoff spot. But the way it's looking right now, I would go out on a limb and guess that the standings as they are now over the next 3 weeks, my personal guess is they're not going to change. I think the 6 teams that are at the top right now are going to stay the 6 teams that are at the top. And if you're not in the playoffs right now, I think those teams are not going to make it. So as you look at the standings right now, the top 6, the bottom 6, I don't think maybe the positions will shuffle a little bit, but it is my opinion as of right now, watching what's happened over the course of the season, that those are going to be the teams that get in and don't get in. So we'll see how that shakes out. I'm sure some of you who are not currently in the playoff window are hoping that I'm wrong and you'll be able to climb your way in. I hope so too. I hope anyone who said don't give up just because I'm saying that I don't think you're going to make it. Anything can happen these last 3 weeks, but a couple of you are now in position where you pretty much said Hillbillies and Darkwing Jut have to win at least 2 out of 3 of their last games, and we got a bunch of the rest of you who basically have to win out your schedule. The last three games of the year, you got to win all of them. Winning 3 games in a row is no easy task in this league. I'm sure Disco right now would tell you otherwise, but yeah. Also, Hillbillies on PCP, currently with a 3-game win streak. I don't see there, but yeah. This week, I was thinking about this before. I didn't want to really say that this was another kind of boring week, but we didn't. I mean, there were good matchups on paper going into the week, but it really ended up being nothing was really close. Nothing came down to Monday night. I said by Sunday, pretty much everyone was set on who was going to win. Gags and Possum, I think, were the closest matchup with a 16-point difference there, but it was pretty much decided. Yeah, it wasn't maybe as competitive as it seemed. Maybe it was. We'll get into that when I get to the matchup here, but yeah, a lot of only one team again crosses the 200-point barrier, so it's been a lot of low-scoring weeks here. And I actually did, now that I'm thinking about it, before I forget, I did actually go back last night just to see, since week 4, we've had, 7 weeks, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Over the course of the last 7 weeks, I believe 6 out of 7 of those weeks, we've had only one team cross the 200-point barrier. There was 1 week in there where a couple teams went over. But yeah, so 6 of the last 7, only one team has made it over 200 points. The first 3 weeks, each week of the first 3 weeks of the season, we had multiple 200-point scores. And after that, it's only been for the rest of again, 6 out of 7 weeks since week 4. Only one team has been able to cross the 200-point barrier. A lot of winning scores, again, were in like 150, 160 range. So yeah, scoring has been down across the board. Why? I don't know exactly for sure. I don't know if well, obviously we've had a lot of injury problems, COVID problems. Maybe defenses are getting a little bit more in tune of what's going on with the season here. But I think, and I could be wrong, that's pretty typical for most of our seasons that there's a lot of offense early, and then things kind of settle down as the season progresses here. Seems like that's a pretty usual thing. Just having the knowledge of doing the recaps for all these years now. So I want to say that it seems pretty often that this is the typical case that, again, several teams over 200 points for the beginning of the season, multiple weeks there, but then it really trails off. Weather related, maybe, I don't know. There hasn't been too much that's been affected really by weather yet, but so maybe there's always a lot of injuries, a lot of tough ones this year. I just told Justin that Saquon and McCaffrey going down for most of the year are those guys' punishments for not making the draft this year. Of course, Disco also did not make the draft. Has he been punished exactly yet? I'm not too certain. I don't think so. Not as severely as Justin and Jay so far this year. But Disco has also, last week, wished he, unless he didn't, maybe did he kill himself? Did Disco kill himself? Because he wished for Teddy Bridgewater to get a leg injury, and Teddy Bridgewater did get a leg injury. So, wish granted. But the fantasy gods are always listening, always watching. They know, and they granted your wish, which means they are going to come back for payment in some form, in some way. Who knows when, who knows how. But if I am Disco, I would be a little bit nervous. It didn't happen. Thought maybe something would happen to Hollywood Brown then on was it Sunday night? I don't even, was it? Yeah, that was the, what was the game last night? It was so boring that I already forgot who played on Monday. Oh, Bears and Vikings. Already, that game was pretty uninteresting for pretty much the entire time. Maybe if some matchups had been on the line, it would have been more interesting, but it was quite the snooze fest. The only time that I walked away into the kitchen, I come back. Actually, I was still in the kitchen for a moment there, and I get a notification on my phone as I'm doing something there that Nick Foles, that the cart is coming out for Nick Foles. Like, what just happened? I watched the entire game. Nothing happened. Nothing exciting or interesting happened. I walk away for a minute, and the cart is coming out for Nick Foles there. So, all right, let's get in. Enough. 12 minutes. That's enough rambling, more than you guys, I'm sure, ever care to hear out of me. So let's get into the matchups. As always, we start with the defending champion from Gags to Riches. Currently on a bit of a slide still. It continues this week. He was going up against, he was 3 versus number 4, Possum Magic. And Possum Magic gets the victory, 166.1 to 150.65. All right. Let's get a little closer here, see what's going on. All right, for Possum Magic, he had Matthew Stafford go for just under 50. Diggs, Lockett, and Scary Terry, 25.5, 11.5, 17.2, respectively. Looks like Lockett's got a little Q next to his name. So does Matthew Stafford. We'll see. I believe Seattle is the Thursday night game, so you might be without Lockett this week coming up. Fortunately, you got a bunch of wide receivers in there on your bench. You can throw somebody in. You had a wide receiver in your flex. So worst comes to worst, if no Lockett, you've got plenty of people to toss in there. Running backs, Henry and Gordon. Two running backs with multiple first names. Henry goes for 15. Gordon only 4.5. Kind of a surprise here. Thought you would start, what's his name, Harris from the Patriots. Again, but then that was against Baltimore. I believe he was actually coming off an injury, so maybe he was a little bit questionable heading into the matchup. Plus, the weather was a monsoon for a bit there, especially towards the end. Not too much was going on. But yeah, you did what you did. Tight end, no Hunter Henry, or not Hunter Henry, the other Hayden Hurst. Who else did you have? Irv Smith, I believe, from the Vikings. He was out with an injury this week. You plugged him into the IR spot, which was an illegal move. Got you to take it out there pretty quickly. So no harm, no foul. That got taken care of there. He went for 10.5 points. Logan Thomas, did I even say his name? That was the tight end he picked up. And in the flex, Myers from the Patriots, 17 points. Kicker, Fairbairn, gets you 0, actually. And plug and play this week, the Giants defense. Yahoo says 9, but we bumped you up 6. So the score was 15. Some decent scores up and down your lineup, other than the 0 and the 4.5 double-digit scores. Always help you. I said you're never gonna. It's always the more single-digit scores, the less likely you are to get a victory. Says Captain Obvious. But yeah, the 166, enough to get past from gags to riches this week. He has Deshaun Watson go for 35.75. Low-scoring game there, only one touchdown near the end. Weather affected that game pretty much most of the way, I think. His receivers, Mike Evans, Christian Kirk, and Darius Slayton. Almost just under 20 for Evans, 6.5 for Kirk, and 14.5 for Slayton. Ronald Jones busts off a 98-yard touchdown run, even though he lost a fumble early on in that game. That 98-yard run ended up getting him, pretty much half of his yards, almost half, came on that one play. He would have had about 96 on the rest of his carries, 98 on that one. But yeah, with that long touchdown bonus, he actually got you 30.8. Duke Johnson, 5.5. Gerald Everett, 4.7. Cole Beasley picks it up for you, 28 points from him in the flex. Justin Tucker, only about 4.5 points. And then the Tennessee Titans defense, I believe that was the correct score with 1 point. You were worried that you actually got -2, but I believe that was the correct score of 1 single point. Gags probably penciled this week up as a loss to begin with, considering no Travis Kelce, no Tyreek, no Julio, no David Montgomery either. Taking a look at the rest of your bench there. But this one had you, looking at your bench, there was really nothing, Gags, you could have done that would have changed the outcome of this matchup. You lost by 16. I don't know if the Arizona Cardinals defense would have gotten you enough points. They would have needed, you only got 1 from Tennessee, so you would have needed 17 from them. I don't know if they actually got you that. I'm not going to go into it here and waste extra time looking up those numbers to see if that would have happened. But really, the rest of your team let you down. Watson at Cleveland, the weather conditions were not good for passing, I think, in that game, from what I understand. So that was a problem for you. A couple single-digit scores there. Probably a little bit surprised that Christian Kirk didn't do too much. Maybe expected a little bit more from Duke Johnson. Surprising that the score was so low in that game, only 10-7. In conditions that probably were more favorable for running, as Nick Chubb showed us, I think. So probably expected a little bit more, at least some scoring, something from Duke Johnson. But it just wasn't meant to be for you this week, Gags. Good news is you dropped to 6-4. Possum Magic moved up to 6-4, but you are still on top of him in 3rd place, while Possum Magic is in 4th place. All right, next up, we have Hillbillies on PCP versus the Shawshank Athletics, the Cobra Bowl, if you will. And Hillbillies on PCP gets the victory this week. Final score 182.75 to 156.65 for Josh. All right, Hillbillies on PCP. Ben Roethlisberger. The Steelers, they don't want to run the ball. This game was never in contention, but yet they still passed the ball. I think Claypool, Deontay, and Juju all had at least 10 targets in this game. So I don't really know exactly why they did that or they were doing that, but the guys who own those receivers, including yourself, aren't going to complain about that. Roethlisberger ends up going for about 62.5 points. Kind of surprising. in a game that was never really competitive for them. 62 is kind of what you would expect, say, a quarterback who's playing catch up near the end of the game to get there. But whatever. Your receivers, Metcalf, Allen, and Fulgham. Only 4.8 from Metcalf. Keenan Allen gets you 13, but Fulgham then gets you only 1.8. Dalvin gets you 15. McKissick gets you 18, mostly off of catches and a touchdown there. Hawkinson, 3.5 in the flex. Claypool, the Roethlisberger-Claypool connection. 2 touchdowns this week. 2 of Ben's 4 touchdowns went to him. I don't think they were long touchdowns there. They were pretty short. He got you 21.5 points. Kicker, Prater, kicked a 59-yard field goal, I believe, at the last minute there to win the game for Detroit. He ended up with about 17 or so points. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, Yahoo says 16. I'm going to guess we bumped that up to about 25. So yeah, big difference. Well, let's run through. I guess we should. Should we run through Josh's team first before we talk about the difference? What the differences ended up being here? Should we? Yeah, why not? Let's do it. Josh's Shawshank Athletics. Herbert goes for 41.5. His wide receivers, A.J. Brown, John Brown, and Jalen Reagor. Surprisingly, only 1 catch for A.J. Brown, 3.1 points. John Brown goes for just over 13, and Reagor 8.5. Fournette, an even 5 points, and Chubb comes back to get you 21.5 points. Could have been more, but he went out at the 1-yard line on that long run near the end of the game so that they could run out the clock there and end it. I believe that run bumped him up over 100 yards. So you got an extra 3. I mean, you didn't get the touchdown, but you got the extra 3-point bonus there. So 21.5 for Chubb. Andrews, 13.1. Evan Engram in the flex, only 3.5. Zane Gonzalez, your kicker, he goes for about 15. And then your plug and play this week, the New Orleans defense worked out pretty well. Yahoo says 20, but based on your score bump, the actual score must have been about 32. So I'm going to guess. So pretty good score for a defense, especially one you probably picked up and might not use other than this week. Was it worth it? I guess it was, because you need all the points you can get, but it wasn't enough to get you the victory this week over the Hillbillies on PCP. So really, A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf both disappointed in this one. Trying to take a look here and see what could have happened for Shawshank to change the outcome of this matchup. You lost by 26, so really, what could have been different? I don't know if Miami's defense. That was a questionable choice there. At least I don't know what they did. It was a home game against the Chargers. I know. Yeah, you didn't want to start your quarterback against your defense, so I get that. But again, 30-some points from the New Orleans defense. You'll definitely take that. I doubt Miami's score was actually that high, so it ended up being a good play. Couple bye week and injury problems here. You picked up Burkhead, but didn't play him. Could have put him in the flex. But that still wouldn't have changed the outcome. You would have had to have the foresight, I think, to have started Keelan Cole. I'm looking back up at your starting receivers here to see who you would have benched. Maybe you would have benched Reagor and put in Keelan Cole, who scored 2 touchdowns, including a long touchdown. You would have gotten a bonus there. But those are things that you would never guess in going into those matchups. You got your starting lineup, I think, pretty set. Maybe your flex play was a little up in the air, but other than that, I don't really think that going into the matchup, any of your lineup choices were incorrect. I mean, and none of them, you didn't make any mistakes that cost you the matchup, basically, is the point that I'm trying to make here. So, all right, Hillbillies on PCP. They climbed back up to 5-5 after, I believe, it started 0-4. And I'm pretty sure, not to toot my own horn, I said just try to work your way back up to 500, whether it's 4-4, whether it's 5-5, and see where you go from there. And here we are in week 10. You're 5-5. You're actually in 6th place, currently in the playoffs if the season ended today. So Hillbillies got to be feeling pretty good. Shawshank, he drops to 4-6. He is in 9th place. All right, next we've got the Springfield Isotopes going up against Yinzer Jags, the 1 versus 2 battle. Let's see, we talked about, all right. We did 3-4, that was Gags. So we'll do 5-6 after this one. Number 1 versus number 2. Yinzer Jags overtook the Isotopes last week, taking up the top spot after several weeks there for the Isotopes. And so this one actually made this matchup all the more interesting to see what was going to happen here. And the Isotopes reclaim first place, at least for now, with the victory over Yinzer Jags. Final score 208.65 to 153.95. All right, for the Isotopes, we had Aaron Rodgers, long touchdown bonus, went to MVS. He got 57.5 points. DeAndre Hopkins, 25.5, thanks to that, the Hail Murray, I believe it's being called. Hopkins with that last second catch, winning the game for Arizona. Let's see, 25.7. Deontay Johnson goes for 23.5. Will Fuller in that weather game, only 8.8, ending his touchdown streak, which I believe, let me take a quick look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He had scored touchdowns in 6 straight games, and that streak came to an end this past week. Alvin Kamara goes for 34.8, scores 3 touchdowns this week. Aaron Jones, 14.5. Gronk, 13.1. Chase Edmonds in the flex, 10.7. Kicker Suckup from Tampa Bay goes for about 13.5, 14 points. And then the Buffalo Bills defense, I believe this score actually was correct on Yahoo, 9. Actually, maybe, yeah. Or I believe maybe it was 6 because they lost there and then they gave up too much of everything. But I believe the long touchdown bonus from Aaron Rodgers canceled out the -3 points from the Buffalo Bills defense losing. Basic, I guess if that's how you want to look at it. So I think the actual score would have been 6, but so that long touchdown bonus bumped it up a little there, or basically canceled each other out. But yeah, the Isotopes, the only team to get 200 points this week and knock off the Yinzer Jags. For Yinzers, again, he had Kyler Murray, so this was an interesting matchup too, as the Isotopes had Aaron Rodgers to Yinzer's Devontae Adams, while Kyler Murray for Yinzer had Hopkins on the Isotopes here. So a little my quarterback to your receiver, your quarterback to my receiver. Interesting how that played out. It's as it's always, we're always hearing the theory of you want to have your opponent's pass catchers. I believe there's some merit to that. I'm not exactly sure. It's a foolproof hypothesis, but there definitely is merit to the idea if your quarterback has a good game, Kyler Murray had a good game, 53 points, but that also resulted in Hopkins having a good game, 26 points there. So, we'll see what happens. Perhaps a matchup that will come again later on in the season. We'll see. But yeah, Kyler Murray, let's actually talk about the scores. 53.5 points. His receivers, Devontae Adams, Adam Thielen, and Tyler Boyd. 18.5 for Adams. Any week that you get less than 20 from Devontae Adams is a gift and a blessing. Adam Thielen, not too much, but he did score twice, getting you 20.3. Tyler Boyd, 10.1. Picked up Balaj from the free agent pile. Actually, it turned out pretty well. Good call there. He got you 15.2. James White, only 2.8. Ebron, 5.8. Tim Patrick, I think he got ejected from this game at some point. I want to say, if I remember reading that correctly. But he did get you 10 points in the flex there. Rodrigo gets you, 11 points there. And then the Baltimore Ravens defense surprisingly lost to New England. Yahoo says 4. I'm going to say the actual score was 7. Only 7 points from their defense. So, I'll be perfectly honest, that matchup definitely worried me for the week there, having Baltimore's defense against New England. Thought you'd be able to get a pretty good score there. Said was worried. Tried to pick up the Saints defense, which, if that would have happened, definitely would have been a worthwhile play this week. But in the end, it didn't really matter because our defenses pretty much scored identical. If Buffalo was 6, yours was 7. So they did not really affect the matchup at all. Just said some, I don't know if, your quarterback situation wouldn't have really changed things there. And let's see, no Amari Cooper. Don't really think there anything else could have changed the outcome in this matchup for Yinzer Jags. Just about bad luck running into the Isotopes, who broke 200 this week. But again, Yinzer Jags with that loss, he did not fall far. He is 7-3. He is in second place. Still, he's got 7 wins. He really just needs definitely one. Probably already in the playoffs if they were going to start. But probably wants to get at least one more victory going down here to secure a playoff spot. And we'll see. Both teams who are in this matchup, Yinzer Jags and the Isotopes, as of right now, definitely I would say the teams that are fighting for the first round buys come to playoff time, but they're definitely still up for grabs here. So Yinzer Jags 7-3, second place. Isotopes now 8-2, and back up to first place. All right, then the 5 and 6 matchup was Disco versus Darkwing Jut, and Disco gets the victory. I believe his 4th in a row. So that means he would have started 2-4, and he's now 6-4. Final score, he had 156, while Darkwing Jut had 133.3. I think last week, did I say that Disco was right around 155 points every week, basically, based on what's been going on this year? I think there was a little bit of chatter about it on the podcast there, talking about Ed's team. He was a pretty consistent scorer. Ironically enough, like the 133 that Justin scored this week kind of stands out as the number. I think Ed's scoring this week this year, I should say, has been right around 135, while Disco has been a pretty consistent. And it's not a dig at you. I'm not making fun of you. I'm just saying if you look at the scores for this season, this is right around Disco's ballpark. I think he had 199 one week, but other than that, you've been right in this area pretty much every single week. So you've been consistent. I'm not talking down on you, not dissing you, it's not a dig or whatever you want to call it there. But yeah, It's just funny that that's exactly how it worked out again this week. All right, Disco, he had Goff. No Mahomes this week. Goff goes for 43.5. Probably expected a little bit more against that Seattle Seahawks pass defense, which is supposed to be so terrible. But it doesn't look like he had any touchdowns against them. I guess they were all rushing, whatever happened there. I'm not exactly certain. His receivers, Godwin, Mike Williams, and Marquise Brown. Godwin 15.2, Mike Williams 5.8, and Brown only 3.4. Running backs, Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs 5.7, but Jacobs pops off and is probably the biggest factor in this matchup. He goes over 100 yards, scores 2 touchdowns, gets you 32.5 points. Waller 6.5, Mooney in the flex only 2.3. Kicker Carlson, he goes for about 14. And then the Tampa Bay defense, you said Yahoo says only 9, but you got a pretty significant bump from them. Probably about 18 points there, I'm going to guess. So about 27 or 28 points from the Tampa Bay defense. So Goff, Jacobs, and your defense get you through the matchup this week. Darkwing Jet, let's take a look at him. He had Bridgewater. Let's see if he had any other quarterback options. Darkwing Jet has 3 quarterbacks on his roster, and unfortunately they all scored in the 30s this week. But you did have the best one, as Bridgewater went for 37.4. I see he's got a Q next to his name, and I said before he did get injured, but I believe that they believe it is a fairly minor injury, so that is good news. I wouldn't be surprised if he misses at least 1 game for Darkwing Jet there, but at least he doesn't look like he's going to be out for too long, which is good for the Carolina Panthers, not so good for Darkwing Jet, especially since I see he has DJ Moore as one of his receivers. He actually went for almost 20 points, 19.5 this week. Robert Woods, only 8.5. Amendola, 4. Devin Singletary, only 2. What's his name? DeAndre Swift. The running back from Detroit Lions. He's been coming on lately. He actually got 26 points. Gesicki gets you 6. DJ Dallas, 5 in the flex there. Myers, the Seattle kicker, gets you about 13. And then the Houston Texans defense, Yahoo says 7. I believe maybe you got 13, I'm going to guess, from them. Not too much. The low scoring definitely helped you, but really there wasn't much in terms of any sacks or turnovers there in that game. So yeah, just not too much of a bump there. They did lose, so you lost a little bit, and probably made up for that. Actually, I think it was passing yards. I don't think Baker Mayfield did too much in that game there. But for Darkwing, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Half your team getting single-digit scores there. Bridgewater getting hurt. And of course, once again, got to mention that McCaffrey getting re-injured. Well, you lost by 23 having McCaffrey there. McCaffrey could have covered that by himself in many cases. But yeah, some disappointing performances there. I'm sure you had to have expected more from Robert Woods, just like Disco and Goff there. If Woods could, yeah, this matchup really could have been very different if Robert Woods said you had Goff, you were up against Goff, and you had one of his pass catchers. So obviously you hoped for more than, let's see, he only had 33 receiving yards. So yeah, disappointing performance. Singletary been disappointing a lot this year. Some wide receiver bye week problems for Darkwing Jet. In hindsight, do you start the you benched the Rams defense against Seattle and played Houston Texans defense? Yahoo says 21. I don't know how many extra points you would have gotten there, but if I don't know if it would have covered if you, assuming you maybe had, if looking back and thinking you had started the Rams defense instead of the Texans defense. So I believe I said the Texans got 13. So according to Yahoo, that would be only be an 8-point bump up to the Rams, based on what Yahoo says. But you said you lost by 23, so you still would have needed another 15 points from the Rams defense there, and I doubt that the yardage was low enough from Seattle there that it would have changed the outcome of this matchup. But again, I think we talked about it with Gags and his Arizona defense. Would having those made those different plays, would it have changed the outcome of the matchup? I don't know. I can't say for certain, and I'm not going to get into it here at this moment. So what's done is done, so that really doesn't matter much. But anyway, we got Disco. He moves up to, again, 6-4. He is in 5th place, while Darkwing Jut drops to 5-5. He is in 7th place. Not too bad place for Darkwing Jut to be, considering, again, he lost McCaffrey pretty early on in the season, but I'm sure he fully expected. I'm tripping over my own tongue here right now. I'm sure, as we all know, Justin probably expected better things once McCaffrey came back. Him getting hurt again is just an unfortunate thing. And perhaps Darkwing Jut's playoff hopes might be getting taken along with Christian McCaffrey, because he is week to week, and they have a bye in week 13. So you've only got really 2 more regular season weeks with where you would have had Christian McCaffrey, and so really this is the time where you really needed him most, and just an unfortunate way things are turning out for Darkwing Jut here this year. As the season winds down, said missing McCaffrey definitely a big factor here, and unfortunately, it might be what costs you a playoff spot. Yet to be determined, but we will see what happens. All right, next we have the Battle of the Bottom. Mighty Midgets going up against Saquon It Ain't So. And Saquon has another quarterback go down in the game. Mighty Midgets gets the victory, 159.65. While Saquon, thanks to Drew Brees getting that injury, fails to crack 100. The second time that's happened this year. First time, I believe, was Shawshank. This time it's Saquon. Must be teams with an S in their names. So that makes me a little bit nervous. 95.2 for Saquon It Ain't So. Mighty Midgets get their second victory of the year, pretty much putting Saquon It Ain't So in the position where his best possible record is now 6-7, and he is, I don't know if we can't quite clap him out yet, but Saquon It Ain't So, Saquon It Ain't looking good. For the Midgets, Tom Brady, 66.25. His receivers, Cooks, Antonio Brown, and Josh Reynolds, a plug-and-play this week, and ended up being the best of all your wide receivers, as Cooks goes for 10, Brown 13.5, and Reynolds 17.5. Miles Sanders and Jordan Wilkins in the running back spots, 13.5 for Sanders, 2.8 for Wilkins. Goddard, your tight end, goes for 7.3. In the flex, AJ Green scores 0. Fortunately, didn't make a difference in the matchup. Kicker Crosby goes for about 6.5. And then the Chicago Bears defense, Yahoo says 19. I'm going to guess the score was 21.22, probably. I'm going to say an extra 3 points there. So, yeah, that would be 22 from the Bears defense. 159, more than enough to get you past Saquon. It ain't so this week. Once again, Drew Brees went out, got injured, didn't play the entire second half there. He only got you 15.7. Juju, 22.7. Devontae Parker, only 5. KJ Hamler? Yeah, 9 points. James Conner, only 6.8. Henderson, the Rams running back, 10.3. Johnny Smith, 9. He had a rushing touchdown, I see. That's according to this. 9.5 points. Jarvis Landry, only 6. Lutz, your kicker, about 9 or 10. And then the Eagles defense, kind of surprising that you went with them when you had the Colts defense at Tennessee. I guess the Giants are. Daniel Jones is a turnover machine, so not a bad play. Really didn't make. I don't think it would have made any difference in the matchup. Obviously, well, of course, you didn't know that Drew Brees was going to get injured in this game. But even if we say Drew Brees scores 50 points in this matchup, tack on another 35 to your score, that only gets you to about 135. So you don't have any Saints in your lineup here. So, but neither does Mighty Midgets. So even if you get a normal quarterback score from Drew Brees this week, the matchup still probably goes to Mighty Midgets. Yeah, it would have taken, you lost by 65 points. So you would have needed at least 80 just from Drew Brees with all the rest of your players there. So that wasn't going to happen. So losing him, difficult. Wasn't the matchup breaker, but it's going to pretty much put Saquon it ain't so. Maybe not quite the final nail in your coffin, but it's just your season, your 2020 season outlook, your window is just about closed. Unfortunately, I always hate saying that, but the reality is the reality. As Gag's shirt would tell you, it is what it is, and it's unfortunate. I feel bad talking about it, but that is just the way that it is. For Mighty Midgets, he is 2-8, moves up to 2-8, but stays in 12th place. While Saquon it ain't so, he drops to 3-7. He is in 11th place. So we will see. It'll be a fight for the who ends up in 12th place and gets the Rivers jersey next year. So it might be fighting for between Mighty Midgets and Saquon it ain't so. All right. We did that. Fine. Okay. Only matchup left. Dubsy Hooligans versus Ed Lager. And Ed Lager, I just mentioned that he penciling him in for 135 points every single week. Ironically enough, if he had scored 135 points this week, it would have been enough to get past the Dubsy Hooligans. But Ed Lager went the extra yard and scored 151.15 this week, getting past the Dubsy Hooligans 129.8. So yeah, if Ed had scored his normal points there, Kevin, he still would have beaten you. Let's take a look at Ed Lager. Both teams now 4-6. Interesting. Lamar Jackson goes for 47 points in this matchup in the rain there. His receivers, Sterling Shepard, Michael Thomas, and Cooper Kupp, 10.5, 4.5, and 10 respectively. Antonio Gibson goes for 22.5, 2 touchdowns for him against the Detroit Lions there. Kareem Hunt, also over 100 rushing yards in that matchup, 19.2. Austin Hooper, only 2. Gio Bernard in a flex, 8.7. Kicker McManus gets you about 8.5. And then the Green Bay Packers defense, Yahoo says 12. But with the bump, I'm going to guess the actual score was about 18. Lamar Jackson gets you, he doesn't score in the 30s this week. He jumps up into the 40s. Let's see, the difference here was 22 points. So let's see things that could have changed. That could have gone differently in the matchup. Well, let's run through Dub C real quick. Russell Wilson, kind of surprising here. I don't think he had any touchdowns. 32.5 points from him. Josh is probably sitting there saying, yes, I know exactly how owning Russell Wilson he goes. The roller coaster that can sometimes be having Russell Wilson as your starting quarterback there. 32.5 points. Didn't look too good. Had a couple interceptions. Let's see. 32.4. Dub C's receivers, Allen Robinson, DJ Chark, and Robbie Anderson. Kevin, you could have Julio Jones right now. You had Julio Jones on your roster. Yeah, I know he was on bye this week, but you had Julio Jones. You had him, and you tossed him away for Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson's 6 points this week. Not much, only 6 points more than Julio scored. How do you feel now? How are you feeling about that? No, I don't think it's good. You're probably just not saying anything, I'm going to guess. Because there is nothing to say that could justify. Anyway, running backs. James Robinson, Mike Davis, 16.2, 8.4. Jordan Reed, the resurrected corpse of Jordan Reed, 11.2. Wow. Curtis Samuel, 4.2. Sanders, kicker, in replacing Koo, who's on bye this week. He gets you about 13 or 14 points. And then the Patriots defense, Yahoo says 11. Actual score was probably 17, I'm going to guess. But yeah, not enough to get past Ed Lager this week. Let's see. Said Jackson outscored Wilson by about 14 points there. Taking a look what the big differences were here. Quiet games from all your receivers there. Dub C. The running backs definitely were the big difference here. As said, Gibson and Hunt both were right around 20, 23, and a combined, 41, near almost 42 points combined from Ed's two running backs, while you got about 24 points combined from your two running backs. You took him down at tight end there and kicker, but other than that, it was fairly even here. So, but still, 129. Your quarterback let you down this week. A couple other players. I don't know if you had some bye week issues. Some stuff going on here. It looks like you did. You got some injury problems there. Not much you can do. You put in your lineup, hope for the best, and when you just got to take the ups with the downs, or the downs with the ups, perhaps I should say this week. But this is the time of year where every point is important, every game is important, every win is important, and every loss is equally as important. Both teams in this matchup are now 4-6. Dubsy Hooligans are in 8th place, though, while Ed Lager is in 10th place. And with the defeat here, Dubsy Hooligans are eliminated from the knockout pool. That leaves just Gags, who somehow manages to survive despite no Tyreek, no Kelsey, no Julio. So Gags and Possum Magic are the two teams who will be going against each other. Although, they went against each other this week, they'll be going against each other again next week in terms of surviving the knockout pool here. So, all right, that is it for week 10. We got Dub C eliminated from the knockout pool here. So that's pretty much everything that happened. I don't know if there's anything else to talk about. Take a quick look at the standings here. Got a little bit into it at the beginning there. We got 3 teams who are 6-4, 2 teams 5-5, and 3 teams 4-6. So let's take a look at the matchups and where you guys fall in terms of standings here. For week 11, we got the Topes versus Saquon. Said Saquon lost Drew Brees this week. Just sorry, Josh, or not Josh, Jay. This is a bad spot for you, Saquon. I'm sorry, Jay, but we might be putting you to sleep, tucking you in, and putting you to sleep for the rest of the season here after this week. Said some problems there. You're going to have to pick up a quarterback. So Drew Brees is probably going to miss a few weeks here. Maybe, I don't know if you'll go with Jameis Winston or what you will do. But it is not looking good considering you already had to win out your season just to get to 6-7. So yeah, sorry Jay, but this is not a good timing for you to get matched up against the Isotopes. Darkwing versus Mighty Midgets. Said Darkwing just dropped to 5-5. He'll be looking to get back to a winning record, while Mighty Midgets will try to play spoiler and knock Darkwing down to 5-6 and make his playoff chances a little more difficult there. So yeah, Darkwing needs to get that victory. Won't be an easy one against Mighty Midgets. Disco versus Dub C. Great matchup here. Although kind of 2 teams. Dub C once again in a matchup of 2 teams going in different directions. But last time it was Dub C versus Possum Magic. Possum was riding I believe a 4-game winning streak. Or maybe I forget if it was 3 or 4. But Dub C was riding a losing streak. Possum was riding Dub C was riding a losing streak. Possum Magic was riding a winning streak. And Dub C ended that winning streak by ending his losing streak by winning, I don't know if it was last week or if it was 2 weeks ago, over Possum Magic there. So once again, we're going to have a matchup of Dub C Hooligans versus somebody on a long winning streak. And Dub C ended that streak last time. We will see if he can do it again this week because he pretty much has to. Because he's 4-6, he needs to win out the rest of his schedule to get to 7-6 and have a legitimate chance at making the playoffs. While Disco will look to give Dub C loss number 7 and put him in a difficult spot there. And Disco could be getting win number 7, which means he will probably wrap up a playoff spot there. But his point total, I should add, his point total is a little bit lower, so it's going to come down to records there and point totals there. So 7, as I would say, as of right now, 7-6. So depending on your point total, might not be if you're 7-6 and your point total is too low, you might be in trouble come the end of the regular season here. So let's not get too far ahead of ourselves in talking about the playoff picture. All right, Gags versus Ed. Gags is trying to end his slide. Ed Logger just trying to hold on to any possible chance he's got. I'm sure both of these guys would love to get the victory this week. And said for Ed, perhaps save his season. For Gags, it would pretty much put an end to Ed's season and get him to win number 7. So we will see how that matchup goes. A lot of good ones here this week. So Disco versus Dub C, Ed versus Gags. And we got Yinzer Jags versus Hillbillies on PCP. The Battle of the Podcasters. This one will be a good matchup here as Yinzer Jags tries to bounce back. And Hillbillies on PCP will try to be above 500 for the first time this year. So that'll be a great matchup to watch. I personally will obviously be rooting for Hillbillies on PCP because if the Isotopes can get a win this week, that would be number 9, and everybody else would be at 7, with only 2 weeks to go, giving the Isotopes a 2-game cushion in terms of regular season first place standing here. So hopefully I'm rooting for Hillbillies on PCP and myself to get a victory this week. And again, have a 2-game cushion with 2 games to go and possibly wrapping up the number 1 seed here going into the playoffs. But still, it's going to be a great matchup. Exciting to watch, and we will see what happens. And then we've got Possum Magic versus Shawshank. Another 6-4 versus 4-6. Possum trying to get number 7. Shawshank trying to avoid number 7 and keep his season alive. So really, this week could, if the teams that are favored, teams have better records, get the victories this week, this could go a long way in determining who's going to make the playoffs and who isn't. Because if Disco knocks off Dub C, Gags knocks off Ed, and Possum knocks off Shawshank, all of those teams would move to 4-7, and basically their best possible record would be 6-7, which probably won't be good enough to make the playoffs this year. So yeah, a lot is at stake this week in several of the matchups here. So Darkwing Jet. So really, I guess you could say the Isotopes versus Saquon isn't too consequential, but for the teams involved. But everything else, all these other matchups this week are going to have playoff implications in terms of the chase for a playoff spot here. So things could They could kind of the teams who are currently in playoff position as of right now could pull away, or things could end up getting a lot murkier in terms of the playoff race. So I'm rooting for murkier, get things jumbled up there, make the race to the playoffs. It's always the most fun when it comes down to the wire here on who makes it. But I would have to say that I think the way it's shaking up, that it's going to be a not so interesting race to the playoffs. And like I said, I think the teams that are currently in it are going to stay the teams who are currently in it. And so I'm rooting for things to get muddled up more this week, but I suspect that the teams who are already pulling away will continue to pull away and knock back some of those teams. Shawshank, Dub C, and Ed Lager, those 4-6 teams. I'm definitely pessimistic about your chances going forward. Nothing personal, of course, just analyzing the situations here. So yeah, all these matchups are going to be interesting. I've already said more than enough. That's not my job to preview things here. So, but yeah, they're all going to be they're pretty much all consequential to the playoffs, the playoff race here. So, all right, that's more than enough from me, guys. Hopefully, no injuries this week. Hopefully, everybody's teams meet or exceed expectations. Everyone stays healthy. Everyone has a good week. We have lots of success, and we will see you back here. Thank you for listening, watching, or whatever it is you do. And yeah, see you back here again next week for the wrap up of week number 11 already. So yeah, good luck, guys, and we'll see you back next week.